Chances are you may handle a wide variety of chemical materials and substances every day. Usually these chemicals are no more dangerous than the ones you use to clean your car or house. However, some of them pose dangers you might not be aware of. Maybe you never checked, maybe no one told you, but under Cray's chemical safety program you have a right to know. You must be told.
Whether you work in the field or in production, in the office or on the grounds, you need to understand hazardous materials you work with. Under Cray's program, you have the right to know where hazardous materials are located in your workplace and what potential effects they could have on your health and safety. Much of this information is found on the Material Safety Data Sheet, or MSDS, located in your work area. Finally, you have the right to review Cray's written hazardous communication program. Along with these rights, you have responsibilities. You must handle all hazardous chemicals with respect and follow the safe handling procedures established for your area. Cray supervisors have the responsibility of training their people about any special hazards of their work areas, in addition to any chemical hazards they may be exposed to. The right to know law requires that you be made aware of any chemical or compound that is a potential physical or health hazard. A physical hazard can cause visible, immediate injury. This includes chemicals that are corrosives, flammables, highly reactive chemicals, explosives, or oxidizers. Corrosives are strong acids and bases that can cause severe chemical burns on contact. Flammables, sometimes referred to as inflammable, are materials that can easily be set on fire and burn rapidly. Highly reactive materials are hazardous because they can react violently with so many common chemicals. For example, those chemicals that ignite when surrounded by air or water can be considered highly reactive. Explosives are materials that are unstable, friction sensitive, or react very violently. Trinitrotoluene, or TNT, is a well-known example. Oxidizers, the last group of chemicals of the physical hazard category, can lead to fires directly, or they can make oxygen available for fire formation. Equally as harmful, but for very different reasons, are the health hazards associated with certain chemicals. Health hazards differ from physical hazards in that their effects tend to be more specific and unique to the chemical in question. In fact, you may not even feel the effects of these hazards right away. Chemicals that are health hazards include carcinogens, all varieties of toxics, irritants, and sensitizers. Carcinogens cause cancer. Just as there are many different types of cancer, there are many categories of carcinogenic chemicals. Toxics are what we generally refer to as poisons. We tend to think of toxic as meaning deadly. However, there are toxic effects that are not immediate or even lethal. Some materials, called teratogens, can affect the unborn. Others affect particular body organs. For example, many chlorinated solvents are considered hazardous to the liver. A third subgroup of the health hazards is the irritants. Exposure to this group of chemicals can cause temporary eye, nose, or throat symptoms. The final group of health hazards is sensitizers. These chemicals, such as epoxy resin used for various repairs, can bring about a specific bodily reaction ranging from mild symptoms to more severe functional difficulties. Now that you know the types of hazardous chemicals covered by the Right to Know law, let's take a look at how you receive information on these specific substances. If you look around your work area, you can probably find examples of hazardous materials. Lead can be toxic. Phosphoric acid is a corrosive. Formaldehyde is an irritant. Alcohol and acetone are flammables, and some people may become sensitized to flux. The Right to Know law states that all employees who may be exposed to these materials be trained to handle them safely. The cornerstones of this training are reading and understanding container labels and the material safety data sheets. The Material Safety Data Sheet is an essential tool used to provide information about dangerous materials. It serves as a safety profile of the chemical product it describes. The Material Safety Data Sheet shows not only the hazardous ingredients, but also the physical characteristics, health hazards, spill procedures, fire data, and protective equipment necessary to work safely with the product. The MSDS, in conjunction with your immediate supervisor, can advise you on how to protect yourself from chemical hazards. This information includes ways to minimize exposure, emergency procedures, personal protective equipment, and appropriate work practices. At sites or other field locations, the Material Safety Data Sheets can be found in a 3-ring binder distributed by Technical Operations Logistics and the Cray Health Safety Environment Department. For other locations, the Material Safety Data Sheets are available from the area supervisor or at the guard booth in the building. MSDSs are also available directly from the Health Safety Environment Department. In addition to the Material Safety Data Sheet, container labels provide a quick source of information about the hazards of a particular substance. Container labels use standard hazard symbols and provide abbreviated information about precautions to be taken when handling their contents. You'll find these labels on original containers, shelves, and tanks that contain hazardous materials. Both the Material Safety Data Sheets and container labels provide guidelines for safe chemical handling, and safe handling is the key to limiting your exposure. Actual exposure is determined by both duration and intensity. Duration is the amount of time you are exposed, and intensity is the strength or concentration of the material. This duration-intensity relationship determines the dose and ultimately the effect the chemical has on you. For example, a high-intensity, short-duration exposure could result in acute effects that range from skin burns to instant death. Carbon monoxide poisoning or an acid burn are examples of an acute effect. Chronic effects resulting from a low-intensity, long-duration exposure are often overlooked. Lung cancer resulting from chronic smoking is an illustration of a chronic effect. Whether acute or chronic, the longer the exposure, the more potential there is for problems. The best way to minimize your exposure to a chemical is to eliminate the way the chemicals enter the body. The route of entry dictates what safety precautions and first aid actions are important when working with a given chemical. There are 3 primary routes: contact, inhalation, and ingestion. Skin contact poses the greatest threat of chemical absorption into the body. The use of protective clothing and gloves provides a barrier to protect the skin from chemical contact. In the event of accidental skin contact, remove all contaminated clothing and thoroughly wash the area with soap and water. The eyes are another serious route of exposure. The eyes are very vulnerable, and contact with a hazardous material can quickly cause lifelong injury. People who wear contact lenses are particularly susceptible because materials may become trapped under or absorbed into the lens. Protective goggles are a must to prevent accidental chemical splashes to the eyes. If you do get a chemical into your eyes, immediately rinse them with water for a minimum of 15 minutes and seek medical help. Next to contact, inhalation is the second most common way for chemicals to enter the body. Since the lungs offer little natural protection to most materials, inhaled chemicals have ready access to the bloodstream. The most effective way to prevent exposure to airborne hazards is to know where the potential hazards are and to have good ventilation. You may need respiratory protection in special work situations when adequate ventilation cannot be provided. If someone does inhale a hazardous substance and becomes ill, get the person away from the work area and into fresh air immediately. Provide first aid as needed and seek medical attention. The last major route of entry into the body is ingestion. In addition to eating contaminated food, lethal quantities of hazardous materials can be taken in by normal hand-to-mouth contact. Everyday actions such as smoking, applying makeup, or even biting your fingernails may result in accidental ingestion. To limit this route of exposure, wear protective gloves when working with such chemicals and wash hands frequently. If a hazardous material is ingested, consult the container label or the material safety data sheet for first aid instructions. Using universal antidotes may do more harm than good. Notify a poison center as soon as possible. Correct spill handling procedures are as important as the route of entry in terms of limiting exposures. Hazardous material spills in most locations should be referred to Cray's internal spill teams. They have been trained and know how to respond to a variety of hazardous material situations. Dealing with spills in field situations can be particularly difficult. Always review the label and material safety data sheet for guidelines on how to clean up a spill and minimize exposure. Regardless of the chemical characteristics, the secret to a safe spill response is a well-thought-out course of action. If you spill a hazardous material, act immediately. Evaluate the situation and evacuate if necessary. Notify your supervisor or Cray management as soon as possible. In addition to being prepared for a spill, proper storage of hazardous materials is a must. All flammable, corrosive, and oxidizing materials should be stored in approved containers in separate storage areas. Except for same-day, same-person use containers, all containers must be labeled with the name and hazards of their contents. Compressed gases present a twofold storage problem. First, the contents of many aerosol cans are flammable or toxic. Storing them near heat or flame could result in a rupture of the can, releasing a toxic cloud. In addition, the contents of gas cylinders are normally under tremendous pressure. If this pressure were suddenly released, the cylinder could become a deadly missile propelled by the escaping gas. For these reasons, be sure cylinders are safely secured so that they cannot fall over and damage the valves. Anytime a hazardous substance is to be shipped, as a stock material or as a waste, strict transportation regulations apply. Failure to follow these rules could cause serious, even fatal accidents. Proper Department of Transportation shipping names, codes, and hazardous materials packaging regulations must be used. Generally, even small amounts of hazardous materials are subject to labeling precautions and shipping restrictions. Under most international laws, the person shipping the materials is responsible for notifying the carrier that the substance is considered hazardous goods. Often, the transportation company is the best source to help Cray employees correctly send hazardous goods. But when a reference is needed, the logistics group, the MSDS, or the Cray safety manual can be used to help classify the chemicals being shipped. The correct disposal of hazardous materials is just as important as safe storage and shipping. Hazardous materials must never be poured down a drain or discarded with normal trash. Arrangements for hazardous waste disposal in the field may be subject to local ordinances or state regulations. As a general rule, if a material is shipped as hazardous goods, it must be disposed of as hazardous waste. For special disposal or shipping problems, contact your supervisor or the Health, Safety, Environment Department. You have a right to know about the hazardous material in your workplace. Container labels and material safety data sheets are provided to help you do this. These are two key resources available to site personnel, supervisors, and all employees worldwide to answer basic chemical questions. In addition, the Cray Health, Safety, Environment Department in Chippewa Falls is available on a 24-hour basis to provide expert assistance for any special problems you may encounter. The purpose of this tape is to inform you in a general way about the many aspects of safely, correctly, and legally handling hazardous materials. The next step is up to you. Your supervisor, manager, or other site personnel have information about the specific chemicals in your work areas. Make sure you obtain this information, understand the hazardous materials around you, and fully exercise your right to know.